Testing, testing.
Hi, good evening everybody.
Good evening.
Thanks for attending the Planning Committee of the Vale of Glamorgan Council tonight. I normally start off with a little bit of poetry, and I'll give it to you as I do every month. And this is mainly for the members or the public who sit in the public gallery. Can I remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live via the internet, and the record of that recording is archived for future viewing. So normally we'll use that for training. Going on to training, if you remember, members, we've got some training coming up. Some people need it, some others maybe not. Not mentioning any names, but those training dates should be etched in your mind. The 15th, I believe, is one of the training days, and the 18th is the other. And I think they start at 4 o'clock. But Marcus can tell me if I'm wrong.
3:45.
I'm correct. There you are.
Well, my paperwork says 3:45.
Okay, then we'll stick to be here early, and then you can all have a cup of coffee. How about that? Thank you very much. So, can we lead on for apologies for absence? I know that we've got some from our side. Yes.
Councillor Janice Birch.
Councillor Janice Perch. Anybody else? No? Okay. Sorry? I haven't heard anything from Bronwyn Brooks, and I haven't heard anything from Anthony Powell. So, okay. Minutes of the last meeting. Can I invite you to move them as a true and correct record?
Yeah.
Everybody happy with those, and I'll sign them off.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We now need to receive declarations of interest from members under the Council's Code of Conduct. Any member who'd like now to declare an interest? No. Andrew Parker?
No.
Are you sure, Andrew?
No.
It's very unusual. Okay then. So there are no declarations of interest. We'll move swiftly to agenda item 4. That's site inspections, the report of the Managing Director. Marcus, are there anything that we should note?
Nothing to add, Chair.
There we are. Nothing to add, members, we note? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 5, building regulation applications and control matters determined by the Director under his delegated powers, which is on page 1. Marcus, anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Move we note? Okay, all happy? Thank you. Agenda item 6, planning applications determined by the Director under his delegated powers, which is on page 12. Anything to add, Marcus?
Nothing to add.
There we are. Thank you. Move we note?
Yeah.
Thank you. Agenda item 7, appeals, which is on page 23. Anything to add on appeals, Marcus?
Nothing to add, Chair. One quick point, obviously, very pleased at the ongoing success rate in appeals, which is now running at 85% success in all appeals. And just also to point out, it will come to members probably next meeting, but that the Waycock Cross appeal has been dismissed by the planning inspector. That's land south of Waycock Cross. And indeed, the other appeal we had for the site Walters Farm north of Waycock Cross has now been withdrawn today by the applicant. So we are pleased that obviously the decision of the committee has been upheld in that appeal decision.
Yes, which was a good thing that they did withdraw it. It would have cost them a lot of money. Okay then. Yeah, somebody? Mark.
Yeah, I just wondered, perhaps might be interesting to come to this committee is how well we do in terms of our percentage rate in comparison with other councils.
There is actually a, if you go to the Wales government website, there is a comparison there. And I may be speaking out of turn, we're either first or second in Wales. So it is probably worth looking at, actually, a good point. But yes, you can actually view it on the Wales government website.
Thank you.
Okay, with that being said, nothing else on appeals. Any other member? Move we note?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 8, which is trees and little I on the delegated list. Anything to add, Marcus?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Okay. Move we note?
Yeah.
Okay, then that's all out of the way with. Right, now on to the more serious stuff, the enforcement action, which is on agenda item 9, page 26, land and buildings in Llanblethy and Cowbridge. Marcus, would you like to lead us through that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is in relation to land which has been the subject of a garden extension without planning permission in Llanblethian. Basically, the owners have, it was reported to the council that play equipment and the land are being incorporated within the garden of the property itself. The owners were written to, nothing has happened, the land remains in the appearance of a garden and being used as a garden. It is quite visible due to public right-of-way that runs to the west of the site. It is within a special landscape area and is quite prominent. So we are seeking authorisation for enforcement action to require the land to be returned to its previous use.
Thank you for that. So what we're asking the members to do is that the Head of Legal Services be authorised to serve an enforcement notice under Section 172 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, amended as to require the cessation of the use of the land as a domestic garden, the removal of all domestic outbuildings, structures, other forms of domestic paraphernalia, and in the event of non-compliance with the notice, authorisation is also sought to take such legal proceedings as may be required. Thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favour, please shout. That's clearly unanimous. Thank you for that. Turning on to the next page, which is agenda item 9.2 on page 31. This is the land and buildings at Pets at Home on the waterfront, which is close to Morrison's, as you know. Marcus, would you like to go through that report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the retail unit, Unit 2 on the waterfront retail park. Members may recall or may have seen the appeal decision where we took action. There were what amounted to advertisements or vinyl advertisements placed inside the window of the shop front, and we were taking action, and we refused a permission for those adverts. They appealed and lost their appeal, with the inspector agreeing that the blank frontage that was created was inappropriate. They've removed the actual advertisement part of it, but now have just blanked out the windows with green vinyl, so you have a very bland green frontage where you can't actually see into the unit. So essentially that is, to all intents and purposes, a new shop front and does require planning permission, even though it's not an advert anymore. And so we're asking for authorisation to seek the removal of the green vinyl so that the normal shop front where you can view into the property is reinstated.
So this is a shop that you can't actually look into, isn't it, Marcus?
Essentially, yes. Yeah.
Which is just absolutely crazy. But what the recommendation is asking you as members is the Head of Legal Services be authorised to serve an enforcement notice under Section 172 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, amended to require the removal of those vinyls from the ground floor windows and top lights on the southern elevation of the shop front, and in the event of their non-compliance with that notice, authorisation is being sought by our legal department to take such legal proceedings as may be required. Members, can we endorse that? It's been moved, seconded. Thank you. All those in favour? That's clearly carried. Thank you for that. Agenda item 10, which is the planning applications proper, and if we go on to the very first one, which is land at Cardiff Road, Cross Common, which is subject to late representations. I've noticed a few of those, and also it was subject to a site visit today. My toes and feet are just still warming through. Yes, not good. I did wear my wellies, yeah.
That's why they're cold.
Yeah, that's why they're cold. Right, so Marcus, if you can lead us through the report, and then we'll take local members first.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do have late representations. An ecological mitigation strategy has been submitted by the applicant. and this has been agreed by the council's ecologist, and conditions 15 and 17 have been amended to take account of that newly submitted ecological strategy, mitigation strategy. This is an application for 50 dwellings and includes a new section of highway linking Cardiff Road and Cross Common Road. The site is not within the flood zone, but does have some constraints, including a group of trees that are protected on the site. If we turn to page 37, you'll note that the application is in outline, but that an indicative scheme has been submitted for the layout of the scheme. Obviously, that would be the subject of a further reserved matters application were the application to be approved. A key part of this scheme is the road linkage onto Cardiff Road, which will seek to resolve what is currently a major problem in terms of the access onto Cardiff Road, where we have a bridge which is deteriorating very rapidly and obviously a difficult junction, and this new road will provide a much more suitable access, much more suitable junction, and obviously remove the problem that we have with the existing bridge, which is slowly but surely deteriorating. Members will be aware that this site is allocated in the forthcoming local development plan, albeit that it is not allocated in the current unitary development plan. As part of the unitary development plan, this site does form part of the Green Wedge. But it is worth noting, and I think it's on page, if you bear with me, page 57, although it is currently within the Green Wedge within the unitary development plan, the background papers to the forthcoming local development plan do point out that that Green Wedge in this particular area was put in place largely because of the proposed bypass at that time. As there is now no intention of pursuing that bypass, the Green Wedge in this location isn't actually necessary, and the Green Wedge background paper does recommend the removal of this part of or this site, if you like, from the Green Wedge, which currently exists. So that's a key point in the consideration of the application. Obviously, there are other issues, such as the council's need to be seen to be delivering housing in general, and obviously affordable housing in total. And I would point out the Section 106 requirements that are necessary as part of this application, and that as part of that, the applicant is agreeing to to firstly provide 40% affordable housing, of which 70% would be social rented and 30% intermediate properties, to provide £260,000 for the provision of education based on 50 dwellings, that they will also pay £2,000 per dwelling to enhance sustainable transport facilities in the vicinity, and a contribution of nearly £1,000 per dwelling for enhanced community facilities in the vicinity of the site. So overall, your officers consider this scheme is acceptable and are recommending approval.
Okay, before I take you, Jonathan, I've got a lady, Mrs. Carolyn Mercer-Davies, who wants to speak against the proposal. So if you can come and take one of the hot seats, and then we'll hear your objection.
She's got 3 minutes to.
Yeah, I'll tell her that. Okay, do you want to speak? Turn your microphone on, and then we'll. Lovely.
Hello.
Yeah, well done. You've got 3 minutes. You'll hear. If you want me to tell you, 15 seconds before.
Okay, there are 2 planning applications, so I assume that I'm going to get...
If you can speak on the first one first, then we'll give you another 3 minutes on the second one.
Okay. My name is Carolyn Mirza-Davis. I'm here to represent the views of Dinas Powys frustrated residents. I'm also a community councillor for Dinas Powys. The frustrated residents are a group of about 400 members from Dinas Powys and the surrounding areas. Basically, we support the council on the application for a new road junction and for the replacement of the existing bridge. However, we don't support the 50 new houses. The existing bridge at Cross Common was identified as being unsatisfactory 4 years ago when a survey was conducted, and we were told that within 2 years that bridge would be unsafe. So we have been living with an unsafe bridge for 2 years now. We are disappointed that no progress has been made on either purchasing the land or either compulsory or by agreement to enable these works to commence. As these works were identified and are long-standing, we're also aware that £500,000 was put away as capital funds to replace the bridge. We want to know if those capital funds are still available. And we wanted to know if there are any other, if we're looking for any other contributions from outside parties. In terms of the bridge itself, like we say, we do support that a new road junction is made. However, it's not clear on the plans what provision has been made for pavements, for pedestrians, and for cyclists, and indeed how you intend to make in the longer term safer for pedestrians and cyclists along the A4055 between Barry and Dinas Powys. And I have another, some of the other representatives, residents from Caer Odin who live opposite the junction. They're particularly concerned that this junction will be opposite where their houses are, and lights will shine from that junction straight into their bedroom, and we want to know what provision will be made for them to protect them from visual disturbances.
Okay, you've finished nice and early. You've still got another 35 seconds, but if you're happy, while you're sitting there, that maybe that some members might want to ask for some points of clarification from you.
Okay.
Are you happy to
Yep.
do that? Does any member want to ask the objector any points of clarification? Okay, thank you, Councillor Franks. Can you turn your... That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you come closer to the microphone, because
sorry,
of the public would like to hear you as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for your advice. Thank you for your evidence. Could you indicate the strength of feeling regarding this this application for housing? You say there's a lot on the Frustrated Residents Association. How strongly do people feel about this?
I like to talk about that when we deal about houses, but there are, like I say, there's almost 450 members of this Frustrated Residents group, and those are people who can actually use the internet. There are a lot more people than that who are actually frustrated about the fact that that bridge has not been replaced. You've had money for 2 years and you've done nothing about it, despite the community council asking for that bridge to be replaced. And on top of that, you seem to be saying that this junction will be an alternative to save you money rather than replacing the bridge. Well, that's all very well that you do that, but isn't there a conflict of interest then that the council is saving money, so they're bound to vote in terms of planning, and they're bound to agree with this planning application for houses just on the basis that you will save money as a community council? So we object to that. We object to the fact that you can vote for this planning application simply that you've got a conflict of interest and you want that bridge replaced with a junction and not do anything about it.
Oh, sorry. No. I'm told by the legal officer there is no conflict of interest. So, right, Marcus, would you like to come back in?
Yeah, okay. I can't actually comment on capital funds for the bridge. That would obviously be a matter for highway services. I do understand that the intention is that the land, the junction road and the new junction and the road would be gifted to the council. And I also understand that we would undertake the construction works for it. So I suspect that the only saving we're making is in terms of purchasing the land, that we're actually still going to have to erect the bridge. I can't say that 100%. That is a matter for obviously the Visible Services Directorate, obviously there is an application submitted by them which is to be considered after this application. However, I think I'm fairly confident in saying, obviously, financial matters are not a matter for the consideration of the planning application as such. The fact that the applicant is granting the land and making the land available for an improved junction obviously is a material consideration in the determination of the application. The bridge design is submitted in quite a lot of detail. There are conditions on both applications which deal with obviously the further submission of details to ensure that it meets highway standards. That is common practice, as you as members will know, that in all cases we would always ask for full engineering details to be submitted subsequently, especially in outline applications. But as there is the subsequent application, which we're not considering at the moment, under Regulation 3, that would be covered specifically under those details. And finally, I think there was an issue raised about the effect of the junction in terms of neighbours and lights shining into properties at that junction. I think if you do look at it, the way it is orientated, it is extremely unlikely that there would be any negative impact from cars which are accessing. You will see that actually the plan that's on the screen, the main road will basically continue round onto the new part. So the only junction will be if I use the mouse, there we are. The only junction for if you like change will be to the little spur that remains onto which would have gone to over the old bridge. That will just become a spur giving access to those properties off that part of the road. And obviously it is unlikely that just by vehicles turning down there will be any impact in terms of light shining into properties' windows, because as I say, basically the main run of the road there will continue and cars will just continue along that. Obviously there will be a junction where vehicles come out of the proposed site, but again I can't see that there will be any impact on neighbouring properties from that.
Thank you.
Excuse me, there will be. You're not looking at the end of the junction, how it goes.
Sorry.
Sorry, can I speak?
No,
you're
no.
not allowed them,
Yeah, your 3 minutes is up, I'm sorry. But, yeah.
No.
Okay, then. Did you want to come back as local members? Yes.
Can you ask her to stand down?
No, she's got another speech yet.
Oh, she's going to go on the next one.
Said twice the new bridge. You do mean the new junction, don't you? Yes. Okay, I know this is your first meeting for a long time, so but we are talking about a junction, right? So, Chair, guidance now. Do I respond, or can I speak to the whole proposal?
No, you speak to the whole
okay, thank
committee.
you. Right, well, can I firstly express my concern that we've received a substantial ecology report by email latest yesterday, and I don't feel committee has been able to do justice to this substantial report. But moving to the report, the main report that we have had for a few days, I do think it does give the impression that it has been written in such a way as to almost dance cartwheels around various policies to arrive at the point, at the recommendation point. And something that has been heard in this room many times, the LDP is still not approved. We've got the inspector coming up shortly, yet we are proceeding with this site. And this site is still in the green wedge. I hear what Marcus says, that situation has changed because of the bypass, but nevertheless it is still in the green wedge. And in fact, the report does say that quite explicitly on, I think, page 61. I'm also concerned, and I did struggle to understand all the justification regarding housing need and the demands of the joint housing and local authority study. It seems to me it's almost a way of ensuring that we have more planning applications and more planning application approvals. And it also seems to me that the goalposts are constantly moved. We're told 5 years housing supply, but then we take some of those years off because they don't count. Moving on to perhaps the more local detail, I'd repeat what the witness says about concern in Southwood Park, not as Marcus perhaps indicated the old route, but the new junction, as you come out, will shine cars will shine directly into lower lying housing on the other side of the road. Now, I see that there's reference that it is not in a flooding zone, but quite simply the land floods. It doesn't matter what the zone says, that land floods, and it is not unusual to see water flowing from that land over the main road to the stream. And then there is the question of actual drainage. Now, that is a crucial issue in this site, but the details are to be agreed. And there's questions how maintenance will be maintained, whether we'll have a pond or whether we will have a reservoir or a combination of two. And I find it bizarre that such a crucial factor is, we'll deal with that in the future. Then we go on the main road, Cross Common Road. Those of us who were able to go to the site visit noted that the existing houses to the east have no opportunity to have off-street parking. Cross Common Road is their only option, and I think we're taking far more parking spaces than have been acknowledged, and it will be a problem forever and a day if things go to plan. At the site visit, we also made reference to a footpath to the north end of the site leading to Longmeadow Drive, and I think there was a degree of sympathy to see if we could have an additional consent to say, even though it's not within the land, that we would want to pursue that. And I know, well, I suspect we're pushing an open door, but I really like it to be in the conditions. I'm confused about the reference to a continuous footpath to Park Brynadon. It might join up with the existing footpath, but it's on the wrong side of the road. You've still got to cross the A455, which is one of the busiest roads, perhaps in Wales. There's no reference to how they get from the north side to the south side, and that I think is a serious flaw. And I think the report, if you look at it carefully enough, does indicate that this is clear encroachment into the countryside, that the boundaries are being stretched, and they're being stretched in advance of the LDP and the opportunity for residents to have their say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I don't know whether any other member wants to ask Marcus anything else, or...
Jonathan.
Oh, sorry, Jonathan. You did indicate earlier on. I did forget about you, Jonathan.
I hadn't.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Some clarification on the junction. Will the old road be stopped up at all? So there'll only be one exit onto the main road then? Yeah. Okay. Simple as that.
Okay. Mark.
Can we have your microphone?
Yeah, microphone.
Well,
Yeah,
in relation to page 65, in terms of this attenuation basin, I just want clarification, really. You said adjacent to the public open space. How deep is this attenuation basin going to be? Is it going to be covered or uncovered? What you're looking at exactly? And also, you've got another point in talks about a detention basin. I wonder what's the difference between an attenuation basin and a detention basin. Thank you.
John Drowsy.
I'll take him next.
Point out where the detention basin part is.
Detention basin, sorry. It's on third paragraph. Someone's got their microphone on. Third paragraph, and it talks about under Cardiff Road would be addressed with the need for a detention basin to be able to store water sufficiently. The River Caddiston is flooded. On page 65. And further up, it talks about an attenuation basin connecting via a pipe under Cardiff Road with the Caddiston River.
Can I come back on all points, and I'll deal with drainage as part of the points I come back on, if I may.
Okay then. I'll take Jonathan Drysdale next then. No? Are you sure? Yeah, I'm just pointing at Jonathan. Right, okay then.
Right.
Is there any other body want to ask any questions before Marcus comes back on it? No? Okay then.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Marcus.
If I deal with the points in order, that's probably the easiest way. So, essentially, the ecology report. Obviously, this is a matter for the council and the council's professional officer in terms of ecology. But what I would point out on that is that there have been long-standing discussions that have been ongoing with that ecology report. I appreciate, and it is obviously good that councillors take the time to read it, but actually the comments of that have a very technical nature, and it would be for the council's ecologist to confirm that it's either acceptable or otherwise. So, albeit it was submitted on the day before the committee, that submission is on the basis of comments that have been, or discussions and meetings that have been held with the council's own ecologist over a long-standing basis, and it is a submission that meets the terms of what our own ecologist has been asking for and what Natural Resources Wales have been asking for. So just to clarify that point. In terms of the green wedge, I think the report does spell out that it is a material consideration that currently that land is allocated. But it also points out that the issues paper, the green wedge issues paper that is submitted, that is part of the consideration of the local development plan, is also a material consideration, because that is the most up-to-date position in terms of the council's green wedges. It is obviously considerably more up-to-date than the unitary development plan, and in that paper it does recommend this land is removed from the green wedge on the basis that it is no longer needed. So that is why the report, that is how the report deals with it. Just to clarify again, with regard to the joint housing land availability study, I do share councillors' frustration on this. This is a very technical document. This is unfortunately used, and quite rightly Councillor Francis pointed out, is used to justify housing development. Ultimately, that is its aim. Its aim is to try and force the council to have at least 5 years housing land supply going forward. It is a study we have to do jointly with developers, and Welsh Government ratify it at the end of the process. Unfortunately, as members will also be aware, that was changed last year with the introduction of amendments to Technical Advice Note 1, and we can no longer as a council have a housing land supply because we don't have an adopted plan. We are in the process of getting one. Our plan is currently going through its hearing, and we have in Welsh Government's view, no land supply. However, they do take account of approvals which are being granted by this council, and it is a material fact that we have to keep bringing land supply forward. As it currently stands, we do have a nominal figure which we can give you for our housing land supply based around the calculations that should be done. We can't do them. We can't officially have a housing land supply figure, as I say, because we don't have an adopted local development plan. But our figure is approximately 4 years at the moment. We need 5 years to meet Welsh Government requirements. So that is where we stand. That is why that, if you like, that evidence is always used when we deal with sites which we feel are acceptable, even though they're not in accordance with the unitary development plan. It is a major material consideration. Flooding and drainage. Obviously, I understand that the site may be wet as it currently is. You'll recall we've been to other sites where there have been issues where the sites are wet. Colwinston is a good example. In that case, actually, this is an outline application, so we would not expect the developers to come up with the detailed drainage scheme at this stage. It will form part of their reserved matters submission, because by the very nature of these schemes, where the houses go and how the houses are designed have a bearing on how the drainage scheme works. In Colwinston, if you recall, that was a full application, but even there we had a condition which required full details of the drainage and attenuation to be submitted. So often in these cases there is a two-stage process. our drainage officer looks at the principle of drainage on the site and says he believes a scheme can be developed to ensure that only greenfield runoff will ever come off the site when it's developed, but he doesn't actually have the full details before him until a full technical submission is made as part of the conditions. And that, to a certain extent, has to be the reasonable approach, because often it will cost hundreds of thousands of pounds to work out a drainage scheme for these sites, and to put the developers don't, if they haven't got planning permission, it's wasted money for them to go down that route. So they have to get their outline permission first, then they have to comply with the conditions to actually submit a detailed drainage scheme to satisfy it. I will deal with, obviously, Councillor Wilson's question about the detention basin. I suspect it's a typo. But it may not be, because they do give these terms different terms all the time, and it'll be a method of holding water back. When water is when you get a heavy fall of water, it'll hold it back, so that eventually what you will get is just greenfield runoff coming out of that at a rate. I have to say, it's the system that's used everywhere on all of these sites. It's the most common form of sustainable drainage system. Essentially, water is held either in one pond or a number of ponds or tanks underground, so that the water flow eventually coming off the site is no greater than greenfield runoff. In respect of the proposed pond, which you asked questions on, in all of the examples we've had so far, these ponds are not very deep, a metre at the most. And indeed, the land is often could be used through many parts of the year as kick-around land, as areas for open space, and it's only during particularly heavy rainfall periods do they fill with water, and then the water is held there until it drains away naturally, either drains away naturally into the ground, or in this case possibly drains away into Caddiston Brook, Caddiston River, through the various attenuation means. Again, I would caution you here that this is not the approved scheme. It'll be subject to a further submission. And finally, in terms of the crossing and how pedestrian flows will be dealt with from the site, is quite relevant with what Councillor Bird said about the closing up of the old access, because the intention is that old access will become a pedestrian route to travel up towards Dinas Powers. And members will recall there is a crossing further up the road there, which will allow people to cross the road, Cardiff Road, safely further on. So it is the intention that that will form part of a pedestrian route towards Dinas Powys. So I hope I've answered all the questions.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Franks?
Slightly come back. I was surprised at the figure of many hundreds of thousands of pounds for drainage scheme design. Yes, if there was a pumping station and rising mains involved, but on the size of this development, that's not. I think it would have been quite reasonable to expect a drainage scheme here. And I seem to recall that there was initially a proposal to have soakaways at this site, but now it's been found that the ground is so waterlogged and impermeable that that is not possible. So this isn't a fine detail. This is a crucial matter. So I'm disappointed that we can't do that. And I might have misled members when I said access to Bryn y Don. The access to Bryn y Don would be towards Barry, not towards Old Dinas Powys, shall I say? And no person would go on that huge circuitous route. That's just not. That's not reasonable. The route to Park Bryn y Don is, as I say, west towards Barry along the A455, and there's no proposal to cross that road at all. Maybe extra pavements, which would encourage people, but not a crossing. And as my colleague has just said, we turned down that smaller development on the A48 because there wasn't proper crossing facilities, and that was for 18 houses, was it? Something like that. This is twice, perhaps eventually 3 times as large. So I think that is a material consideration, Chair. And when you're considering that, can I give notice? I'd like to move we do not approve this this application. Thank you.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Marcus, would you like to come back?
Only to add that obviously soakaways now are very much frowned upon on all developments, no matter what the ground conditions, because of individual soakaways do not achieve often the required result. So it is very common, not just for this site, for us to turn around and say soakaways are not acceptable. But as I say, it is the subject of a detailed submission further on if this application were approved. That is quite common and has happened on many, many approvals in the past. All I can advise on the issue of crossing, pavements are provided. This is not the same situation as the other application which has been referred to, which actually wasn't refused by the committee, if you recall. It was deferred to allow the applicants to go away and consider possible means of achieving crossing. So it was a different situation in any event for a number of different reasons, which I won't go into. But that has been considered, and our highways colleagues don't consider it's necessary in this case. In that case, they did consider it was necessary because of access to bus stops and other issues.
Okay, you got some good reasons for refusing it?
On the grounds it's premature, on the grounds of encroachment into the green wedge and inadequate highway and drainage details.
Okay. It is in outline, though. You know that, don't you? Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Everybody happy to go for a vote? Okay. Councillor Franks moved that we don't accept the officer's recommendation and refuse it. So those in favour of refusal, please show. That's 4. Okay. And those against, those in favour of this officer's recommendation?
No, you've
Sorry.
got to take,
Yeah.
no, you've got to take
Yeah.
a vote
Those
against.
against that proposal, please show. $15. Abstentions? 1 abstention. Okay. Shall we vote on the substantive motion then? Those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. $16, thank you. And those against the officer's recommendation? 4. That's clearly carried. Thank you for that. Right, we move back again to the next agenda item, which is the highway improvements and on Cross Common Road. And we've got, first, we have got you to, I'm not going to ask you to speak yet because I'm going to ask the officer to lead us through the report first, and then I'll ask you to come back. Okay, fine. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. I won't spend long on this application, obviously, as it is pretty much part of the previous submission, but there are detailed plans of the proposed new road layout on page 89. They are on the screen behind me as well, just for to give an indication of the road layout. Very quickly, obviously, there remain some objections from local residents, but I think it is clear to point out that any vehicles using this road are unlikely to have issues of light shining into houses here. If they do, it will be at the most oblique of angles. As I say, the new road itself will basically link straight into Cross Common Road, and the junction onto the old nib of what is the bridge will be, if I very quickly point up here, will be here, and the junction there obviously faces away from the majority of existing houses. I think there is a house up here, but it is some distance from it. Obviously there is a new junction onto Cardiff Road itself, but that is some significant distance from houses. So I don't believe any issues of light shining would be harmful to residential amenity. So no, this scheme is, as shown there, it is recommended for approval. I'm happy to take questions.
Sorry, Mark.
Can I just, because it's a regular reg-free application, is it satisfactory for all the members of the planning committee should be here? Because we've got a cabinet member in here, and I was just wondering, because in the past, certainly we had reg-frees before, cabinet members have had to walk out the room. I just wondered.
No, I think that was rescinded, wasn't it, Jeff? Yeah.
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 That's okay.
That was a long time ago, Mark.
Yeah.
You're living in the past. I'll be careful what I say, because I'm older than him. Marcus, okay, fine. Would you like to turn your light on? That's it, your mic. And you've got 3 minutes again. Thank you.
Okay, I think I've got confused here, and I thought you were talking about the road on the first one, and you were talking about the houses now. Am I correct?
No. No, sorry. We were
Because
talking
I was talking about the road on the first one,
Right.
and I'm talking about the houses
I'm
now.
sorry that you went through that debate and never pointed it out to us. That
Well, I didn't realise. I thought
yeah.
you were because you've linked them both together, and
Yeah.
I've been rather confused by the whole thing.
No. Well, I wasn't confused. I don't know about any other
Well,
member.
you are very experienced, aren't you, in these
right,
matters?
Sorry.
And I don't think it was very clearly pointed out
Yeah.
to me. And you must have known that I was talking about the road, not the houses.
We thought you were linking them together. That's probably the reason why. That's what I assumed.
Well, I'm going to speak out about the houses now. And I object strongly to the houses, and so do all the residents of our group.
The unfortunate thing for you is that it's just been approved and we can't go back on it. We are now moved on to the second agenda item, and we're talking about the highway improvements. So unless you've got anything to add to what you said in the first place,
Well,
can
yes,
you
there's
restrict it to
okay.
highways?
I'm going to say that the highways, okay, they can't cope with the traffic through Dinas Powys at the moment. And you're not catering for additional, for the increase in traffic. Dinas Powys becomes gridlocked if there's just one road that is upset by traffic. For instance, in the last couple of weeks, the houses on the building at Ardwin, there was some traffic restrictions there, and the traffic through Dinas Powys was horrendous. There was absolute chaos in Dinas Powys. I'm going to object to both of them, both the new road and the houses, because you're not considering the impact that it's having on Dinas Powys. And I do believe there's a conflict of interest, that you're linking the two together, and you shouldn't be considering the financial side of this. Like you say, that you're not considering the financial, you should only be considering the plans.
Yeah, can I just remind you that the officer did say that finance shouldn't come into a planning committee.
Then why did the officer in question mention financial provision from the houses for the road?
I don't remember that.
Let her finish
Yeah.
and then let Marcus come back.
Yeah,
He's mentioned Section 106 money being raised. He's mentioned the donation of the road, or a place through that land for the road to be built based on the money
can I
raised.
ask the officer to go through it again for clarification? Would that be helpful?
Yes, as long
Okay,
as I can
thank you.
speak afterwards.
Yes, okay.
No, a minute. No, 3 minutes are up.
Yeah.
3 minutes are
Yeah,
up.
your 3 minutes are up now, so we'll ask the officer to come back on what you've said. Okay?
Chair, I made it very clear that the financial considerations are not for the road, are not part of the consideration of that application, the previous application or this application.
Correct.
On the previous application, just for clarification, as members will be aware, Section 106 contributions are sought to mitigate effects from housing developments and other developments. Those submissions are directly related to the applications themselves. So in this particular case, it was in relation to the need for additional education provision, the need for additional sustainable transport provision, the need for additional community facility provision, and obviously the need for affordable housing in the area. So they are directly related to the planning application and mitigating the effects of that planning application, just for clarity.
Okay then. Members might want to ask the lady if she would like points of clarification. Yes, I've got one here, and I'll take any others, and then we'll throw the floor open. Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I'm aware that Dinas Powys does have traffic problems. I'll always try and avoid it myself because it's very heavily congested. But this particular road, to me, far from actually making it worse, actually makes that's a particularly problem junction, both in terms of congestion and safety. This realignment of the road, to me, is a marginal improvement on the road network. I don't understand why it should be branded as causing further problems. Perhaps the speaker could say how she sees it makes it worse rather than better.
I believe that as a council you are going to pass the houses simply for this road to raise the money.
Yeah, the houses are passed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only reason that the majority of you have voted for that is because you're not having houses in your own area.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. No, don't go down
You're
that route.
you're voting on a political basis. There aren't many people here.
Can I just point out to everyone, this is about points of clarification, and I think you've stepped over the mark by bringing that
so
in.
I apologise.
Okay then. So is there anything else what Councillor Roberts asked you'd like to clarify? Yeah.
The emissions on the Cardiff Road, could we please have a survey of the emissions and air conditions on the Cardiff Road through Dinas Powys?
I'm sorry, you're asking us another question now, which is not allowed. Councillor Roberts clearly asked you some question about the road realignment and the benefits of it and what your objection is.
Okay,
Yeah.
like I mentioned,
Thank you.
the residents at Kyrodin have raised concerns that as they come off that junction, the new junction, the lights will be shining into their bedrooms and what provision will be made for it. This will upset their living arrangements.
Okay. Any other member like any points of clarification? No? Okay, then I'm going to throw it open. Local members first. Could you turn your microphone off? Thank you. Lovely. You can step down now if you like. Thank you. Councillor Franks.
Okay. I was alarmed when I always listen very intently to Marcus, and I was alarmed to hear that this bridge is now deteriorating rapidly, because we've been told that hasn't been the case. So, but I was. We'll move on from that. We'll move on from that. Basically, there is support for this this bridge, colleagues. It is a substandard structure. It is a flooding hazard because it's being propped up by timber, and there are other issues that I've mentioned in the previous application, such as stripping away parking along Cross Common Road and the problem with headlights in houses in Southford Park. I think this application should be considered on its merits, not relating to any housing development. But the bottom line is, I would encourage people to support this application.
Okay. Any other member? Anybody want to move something then? I think you were saying you want to move something, do you? Support the officer's application? Yes. So if you move that, and then we'll get a seconder. Val seconded it. Okay, then we can go to the vote then. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. Looking round, that's unanimous, so thank you for that. We'll move on to the next application, which is on page 108. Yeah, land of rear of Seaton Hoe in Penny Turnpike Road, which was subject to a site visit this afternoon. I'm not sure if there's any late reps, but I'll ask Marcus to go through the application with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there are no late reps on this application. Just for clarification, this is an outline application for a single dwelling in the rear garden of a property referred to as Seaton Hoe off Penny Turnpike Road in Powys. As I say, it is an application in outline, so further details will be submitted as part of reserved matters. We are considering the principle of a dwelling in this location. The plan does show an indicative layout. It's on the screen now. It's also on page 109 of the report. I understand members were on site. I wasn't at the site visit, but I understand members did fully consider this and that there were some concerns about the possible access and the speeds of vehicles travelling along the road. And I would point out at page 114 the clear references to the speeds and the fact that a traffic survey has been undertaken as part of this consideration of this application, and that the vision displays that are required to be provided prior to the house being lived in are of a size and standard which are necessary for the speeds of traffic travelling along the road. So highway colleagues have raised no objection on the basis of those vision displays of 2.4 metres by 69 metres to the north and 2.4 metres by 58 metres to the south, and they can be achieved with the clearance of existing hedgerows, but obviously there would be a requirement to replant inside of the, or to refence or replant inside of those vision displays. You will also note that the applicant themselves has made an application for an application between 8 and 10 metres high, for a dwelling between 8 and 10 metres high. Your officers are recommending that no higher than 8 metres would be acceptable, and I put a condition on to that effect. Finally, from the report at page 116, you will note that the consideration of the impact of any proposed dwelling on the neighbouring properties has been made, and it is considered that a dwelling can be sited on this plot and achieve the required 21 metres between facing windows and achieve sufficient amenity space as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Marcus. I know we've got a speaker against and one for. So if Mr. Roger Pattenden, who is against the proposal, would take a seat. And like before, Mr. Pattenden, you've got 3 minutes, and turn on your light, and you can go when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Roger Pattenden. I live with my wife at Park Cottage on Park Road. The officer's report shows that our rear garden abuts the rear garden of Seaton Hoe, in which this proposed house would be sited. The other neighbours who objected support me in speaking this evening. Regarding access, neither the planning statement nor the officer's report appear to cover the question of access during construction or address the large difference in ground level over the site. Those members who know the area or who attended the site visit this morning will know that this section of Penny Turnpike is narrow, steep and extremely busy with commuting traffic. Since the present ground level within the site is higher than the road level, formation of an entrance into the site, the provision of space for construction vehicles and connection to existing services in Penny Turnpike is likely to require at least partial road closure for part of the construction period. Recently there was dramatic traffic congestion in the area when Penny Turnpike was briefly closed to enable resurfacing the road by the entrance to the new development of the old Ardwin site. So even partial closure of Penny Turnpike would have considerable traffic congestion implications. To be accessible from the road, the driveway with this house would have to be significantly lower than the house, probably requiring a flight of steps to get from the car to the front door. I think that the implications of access during construction and between the driveway and the house should have been considered by the officers. If it had been, I wonder if they would have recommended acceptance. With regard to pedestrian access, the destination of most pedestrian journeys from the site is likely to be Dinas Powys village centre. But heading south from the site down Penny Turnpike towards the village, there is no footpath for quite some distance along what is a steep, narrow and, during rush hours, a very busy road. The officer's report acknowledges this problem and suggests that one should therefore take an extended and circuitous walk north up to the entrance to the old Ardwin development, then through that estate and down a woodland footpath involving steps down a steep bank to the bottom of Penny Turnpike. Do you consider that this suggestion represents compliance with relevant UDP and LDP policies which require a high level of accessibility for pedestrians and people of impaired mobility? Finally, regarding privacy, spaciousness and amenity, UDP Policy House 11 requires residential areas characterised by high standards of privacy and spaciousness, which we believe that we have, to be protected from overdevelopment. And paragraph 933 of Planning Policy Wales states that insensitive infilling should not be allowed to damage an area's character or amenity. We consider that this application does not comply with several policies. I hope that you will agree and be minded to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you must have timed that, Mr. Pattenden, because you were on 1 second when you finished that. Amazing. Would any member like to ask Mr. Pattenden any question of clarification before he steps down? Because we have somebody who's going to speak in favour of this. So, any member would like to ask any clarification? No? Would you like to step down and then we'll hear from the person who wants to speak in favour? Right, this is Mr. John Hurley from Planning and Environment. That's the correct title, is it? Planning and Environment, Mr. Hurley.
Yeah, company's WYG.
Right,
Planning
thank
and
you.
Environment.
And you, like the others, have got 3 minutes to put across your case. And then any points of clarification we'll ask you following that. Then I'm going to ask Marcus Goldsworthy to come back on some points of clarification that the previous speaker raised. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Chair, members. As you are aware and have heard, this outline application has been recommended for approval. The committee report states that the site is within an established residential area, and there have also been a number of recent approvals for residential development in the immediate vicinity. Therefore, the principle of development is accepted. As the application is in outline, the scale design of the proposed dwelling has been reserved, and as you've heard, this will mean that should the application be approved, detailed proposals will be submitted in due course. However, as part of the application, and as you can see on the display, a comprehensive indicative layout has been provided. This has been assessed by officers who have stated that the site can adequately accommodate a 2-storey dwelling, which would be comparable to other dwellings within the location. In line with relevant planning policies, officers have concluded that there will be sufficient separation space between the proposed and existing dwellings to avoid any loss of privacy, and the level of amenity space that can be provided will accord with the authority's standards. These issues would of course have to be considered in detail as part of any reserved matters application, which would be publicly consulted on. The Highway Department, as we have heard, have no objections to the proposals. We have had detailed discussions with officers, and a speed survey has been undertaken. This has allowed us, based on the results of it, to ensure we have the necessary visibility displays for the access. It is also important to note that the recent planning permissions for the coppice, which is accessed off Park Road, and the former Children's Home site opposite, will introduce additional traffic calming measures for the road. This will reduce vehicle speeds further. In the case of the coppice, the visibility displays that we are providing are significantly greater than those required for the application for 5 houses. As part of any detailed proposals to be submitted in due course, it will also be a requirement that a suitable turning circle can be provided to allow vehicles to exit in a forward gear. There is also sufficient space within the site to accommodate off-street car parking, and a footpath will be provided along the frontage, which will connect with the existing footpath to the north. Thank you for your time, and we will respectfully request that the application is approved in line with officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hurley. You did have another 26 seconds, but I'll ask members if they want to clarify anything with you. I read the report quite clearly, and I was a bit concerned about those traffic speeds where your entrance is going. The lowest speed was just over 36 miles an hour, and the top speed was 38 in a 30 mile an hour. So that tells you that traffic is travelling much faster than that. I'd suggest in the 40 plus zone. Those speeds are pretty unacceptable, and putting an entrance where it's going must worry some people. And you did say that you were minded to do something about traffic speeds yourself. Would you like to just clarify what you were minded to do?
In the context of the traffic speeds, we had a bespoke traffic survey done for our application. For the Ardwen site, which we've already heard about this evening, they also had a traffic survey done, and the visibility displays that they needed to provide for their access were in accordance with the speeds that they had for their application. Also, I think which is material is the recent approval for the coppice, which is access off Park Road. It's one house which has been proposed to be demolished with a net increase then of 4. Now, the visibility displays onto the road coming out of Park Road are far worse for that application than they are for ours. Our visibility displays with accord with the speed that the speed survey has recorded. The coppice application and the Ardwen site will also provide speed calming measures. The coppice application will include a build out from Park Road onto Penny Turnpike Road. There will also be some markings provided in the road, and those are planning conditions attached to those permissions. So the vehicle speeds are what they are. The visibility displays that we're providing accord with those speeds, but because of the measures that the other schemes have to provide and implement, it is in all probability the case that the vehicle speeds will come down on that road. Thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Councillor Parker first. Thank you. Yeah, your microphone.
It's a question regarding the removal of the hedge, and I need a bit of clarification from Marcus on this. Quite clearly, you're going to have to build some fairly substantial retaining walls, particularly where the hedge comes away from Sutton Hoe. Now, in my view, I don't think that the red line actually is correct, because quite clearly that is the outward face of the visibility line, and I think this red line should be further in, because quite clearly you're going to have to build retaining walls. The other thing that concerns me too is there's no indication as to the number of bedrooms, but it's quite likely that the requirement will be for 3 cars, and having visited the site this afternoon, I'm very concerned that to try and get 3 cars in with a cutting of 2.5 meters, for 3 cars to turn around and get out is going to be very, very difficult to accommodate. But the crucial thing for me is the effect of retaining walls along the highway and the red line.
Did you want to answer that, Marcus? Because this is in outline, isn't it?
It is in outline.
And the detail you haven't got.
We haven't got the detail. There is a condition dealing with the submission of fence walls or enclosures between the site and the boundary, with other dwelling of Seaton Hoe, but we could extend that to include the submission of the details for onto the main road. I have to say, because it is in outline, those details are going to have to come in anyway.
My concern is that the whole of, I mean, we've already had one problem last time with retaining walls. This retaining wall is going to be quite a high structure. Certainly 2 meters plus, and that's only me guessing from what we saw today, which is going to have to be built well into Seaton House before we actually get the visibility displays functioning.
Yeah, but that's they wouldn't need to function until someone's living in the house, so that's not really relevant.
Okay, Councillor Franks.
Thank you. Good evening. Well, I've heard you say that this is in keeping with the surrounding existing developments and the new developments, but if members and yourself consider from the junction with Park Road eastwards towards Cardiff to the end of the housing, I don't think there's one driveway that accesses directly onto Penny Turnpike Road. Park Road has a junction, Turnpike Close has a junction, Ardwen has a junction, and then the ribbon development along Penny Turnpike, there's a extended lay-by. So really, this is quite a different case where you're having a crossover basically straight onto Penny Turnpike. Do you really consider that safe?
Thank you. I think I'd add in respect to that, just draw you back to the points that I previously made, hence why we had detailed discussions with the highway officers, and one thing they did specifically want us to do was a speed survey. You know, that speed survey was undertaken. The visibility displays that we need to provide in order that we can provide a safe access were agreed with highways, and we've demonstrated that we can provide them as part of this outline planning application. There are a number of properties on Penny Turnpike Road, as you say, which head out northwards up towards Cardiff, which do have a direct access onto Penny Turnpike Road. And as part of our submissions, we drew to officers' attention that there have, for instance, been the approval of a couple of other properties on Penny Turnpike Road previously. For instance, an application in 2007 under the UDP, and then another application in 2007 for 2 detached dwellings, which are currently being constructed as well. So in that respect, we got sufficient visibility displays which were called with national guidance, which have been considered acceptable by the highway officers. Thank you.
Okay, you wanted yeah. Can it be point of clarification what he's actually said, because we're straying into this realm of asking him specific questions. Okay.
I'm not sure if I can meet those criteria, Chair, but
No.
I mean,
well, you should address it to Marcus then.
well, I know it's an outline application, and therefore the question of the levels and how the road level is brought to accommodation with the higher garden level is a very relevant point here, having scrambled up the bank myself on the site visit this morning. So I wanted to ask, can you give us a broad indication of your thinking as to how the levels will be dealt with, so that the driveway into the property isn't very, very steep, because that is a safety consideration for the access if you've got cars that are coming down a very steep slope to come out. But I understand that there's going to be some changes in the levels.
Can we put that to Marcus? Marcus can answer that rather than...
well, if Marcus can answer it, that's fine, but I was assuming that as it was outlined that he couldn't, and it would have to be...
Yeah, it's more appropriate for Marcus.
On that matter, obviously any application that comes in for reserve matters will have to comply in terms of the gradient of the drive with the regulations of the Highway Authority, or the requirements of the Highway Authority. There will be specific requirements for gradient of that drive and what it can achieve and what it shouldn't go above. So when the full details are submitted for the house, that will be considered then.
Okay. Did you want Mark?
Yeah, I just want a clarification really. You talked about other applications being approved. Have all these applications in reference to the road speeding, have they all actually been built, or are they still on paper?
Well, I use Penny Turnpike Road and I can see the houses under construction now. I think you'd agree. Local members will tell you that they're not finished, but they're not far off. No, they haven't been started, have they? No. So, that being said, everybody's asked you points of clarification. If you'd like to take a seat back where you were, and it's up to members now, and we'll throw it open to members. Did you want to speak first, Val? Yeah, okay then, fire away.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Pattenden has already mentioned the points that I want to bring up. I wasn't able to the site visit this morning, as you know, because I was ill. First of all, he was quite strict on himself that he obviously couldn't mention blocking his view because he knows he's not entitled to that. But having been up to the top of his garden on another visit, it's a huge area for the only area, the back garden, because of the topography, lie of the land, that can be enjoyed in any space, and that any proposed dwelling there would seriously impact on the privacy and enjoyment of their garden space. Another point in the report says there is a lot more than 21 metres between the windows of the proposed house and the ones at Park Cottage. Well, of course there is. It's right downhill. but the garden area is where they could be enjoying their garden. And to me, unless there's plenty of screening, it would be completely unsuitable for that. My main concern, as other people who have spoken, seems to be the proposed access. At this point, the road is still rising up, and to create more traffic entering and leaving the proposed property can only exacerbate the existing problems at a point where traffic from Cardiff is speeding down the hill and others from Dinas Powys are speeding up the hill. And whatever the figures say, they're not 24 hours a day figures, I'm sure. The existing houses are on the flat at the top of the hill. There is other one point of access at the top, the 3 houses on the left, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the names. There's 1, 2 and 3. Oakley, yeah, yes, it's not Oakley, no. I'm a regular user of Penny Turnpike and Turnpike Close and Park Road and those 3 houses, and I have difficulty, and you have to wait quite a while to be able to see clearly that there are no traffic in either direction coming forward. As I wasn't able to attend the site visit this morning, I don't know how many, well, I've been told now that a couple of members who know this, know the area, bothered to walk up the hill to view the proposed point of access. It is utter madness to create an access at this point, and as I think Krista said, it's the only house that would have this access from a driveway, and a steep driveway at that onto the road. The Vale has already given permission for 5 new houses in Park Road. We're talking about the probability of at least 10 to 15 houses emanating from those houses alone. Since I'm in no doubt, well, I know now that permission has been given for 50 houses across Common against the wishes of the Dinas Powys Community Council, I suspect that at least half the extra traffic from that development will turn onto Cardiff Road in the direction of Cardiff and take the road through the village up to Penny Turnpike. Another point to say is that any pedestrians from the developments, and Roger brought this up, wishing to walk to the village could use the improved footway from Ardwin down towards Mill Road. This is absolutely ridiculous. It can only be accessed from inside the Ardwin site. The new name is Ardwin Walk, so I hope people would use it, which is to be the name of the development, who would choose to walk uphill, enter Ardwin, find the path, and then walk downhill, completely impractical. I'd like to make an alternative proposal that we defer this application until we have in front of us practical details of how the removal of probably at least 2 meters height soil to whatever depth inwards we have in front of us even before building could start, with a constant flow of traffic. That's going to take a tremendous amount of earth removal, and I am not going to support this application.
Thank you. Have you got a seconder? There we are. We've got a mover and seconder for a deferment. So, yeah. Now, who else wanted to? Yeah. Do you want to come back on that idea of a deferment, Marcus?
Back on a couple of the points that have been raised, just to deal with those.
Yes.
One of the key issues that's been talked about is accesses which exist on Penna Turnpike Road. And I do recall some members who are here were on the site visit when we actually went to look at Ardwin. And I do recall, I can't remember which member it was, but someone was moved off from a parking lay-by that existed opposite this site with those 3 cottages, the cottage, and that is a direct parking and access onto Penna Turnpike Road, albeit on the other side of the road. But it is, these accesses are all the way up there. So I don't think we can say there are no accesses onto Penna Turnpike Road for houses. That is there. The application is in outline. I have to stress this. There are a number of conditions dealing with ground levels and the details having to be submitted in terms of ground levels. Members will be aware that there are a number of sites throughout the Vale of Glamorgan where we do have quite steep differences between land and between the road access and the land where the houses are built, and you often get situations where drives are dug out, and sometimes you have a house which is they sometimes call it upside down houses, living accommodation on the ground, maybe on the first floor and bedrooms on the ground. But in many instances it doesn't involve the digging out of the entire site. It just involves creating an access at a gradient which is suitable to meet highway standards. And in this case, we don't have a design of a house. We are only considering the principle of residential development here, of a single dwelling here. We have comments from our highways colleagues who have considered the speed that has been, the average speeds that are that do occur on the road past the house. There's a traffic survey that's been undertaken specifically for that purpose in relation to this proposal. So we can't suggest that we don't have the information to allow us to make the application, to consider the application. All that information is before us. If members are concerned about access details and when the specifics and the details of those designs come forward, that will be the time to raise those concerns. This is purely the principle of a house on this site, and I think I have to stress that.
Okay, Councillor John Drysdale, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the concerns are obvious. The people I walked up the road on the site visit this morning, so I know, the difference about other direct accesses on Penny Turnpike Road is this is the steepest part of the road, and that was quite evident. But a couple of other issues. One is, it was referred to earlier that a couple of the other developments, Ardwin and so on, had conditions attached for traffic calming measures. The road clearly is dangerous. This is a difficult access. There's a kind of incremental creeping here, and what I'd like to ask is whether there has been a sort of coherent study made of what the traffic calming should be, given the developments that have gone on there. I'm a little bit afraid that perhaps the traffic calming's been done piecemeal with each application, and it would be better if it was done as an overview with the section 106 bits from each of the developments being put together to a sort of coherent scheme, because I think it does need electronic signs, it perhaps needs rumble strips top and bottom, but I'm not a highways engineer. Somebody needs to think about that. Another point that was mentioned but then not taken up was about the construction phase and the difficulty of, will it involve road closure and so on. And I was trying to get a quick look through the conditions to see if there's anything there about some kind of management plan for the construction phase, and I didn't see one. Sorry if I've missed it, but if there isn't one, can we have one? Because I think that again needs to be thought through as an input. On the question of using the Ardwin walk, I'm afraid I wouldn't agree with the comments that were made there. As I say, I was on the road. I would say it's probably about 30 yards from the access up to where the Ardwin entrance is. So going that far uphill on a pavement, I'd do it rather than walk down the road, that road, steeply without a pavement and then cross over and go through Ardwin. So I think that is feasible. But the other two things, I mean, this is on the margins, I think, of acceptability, and we need to do something to try and make sure that, it is okay.
Okay. Do you want to come back on that, Marcus?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, yes, thank you.
And then I'll come to Andrew Parker.
Obviously, the schemes for Ardwin and the Park Road scheme, the housing scheme at the top, were considered almost alongside each other, if you recall. I think Ardwin went through first, and Park Road was either a meeting or a couple of meetings after that. I am aware that the highways officer, when they considered both the traffic calming necessary for Ardwin and then subsequently the traffic calming for the Park Road scheme, they considered those in conjunction. They were both applications were in and were being considered at the same time. So the highway officer was the same highway officer. I know that they did look at what was necessary to slow down traffic coming both up and down the hill with both of those schemes in mind. So it was a comprehensive scheme that was submitted by or is proposed in terms of both of them. Obviously the one scheme for Park Road will only be implemented when that housing scheme is implemented. The Ardwin scheme is being implemented now. In respect to this house, that will have been noted when highways made comments on this house. It is a single dwelling, so it would not be appropriate in this particular instance unless there was something majorly needed to actually ask for traffic calming as part of this application. Highways officers have considered the other approvals and the calming that is going to be provided obviously by Ardwin, because the application is ongoing, and they do consider that is sufficient to allow this scheme to take place. It does have sufficient visibility displays, and they are happy with that. So that's really all I can say. We don't have our highways officer here to elaborate any further, but I am aware that they did consider those in conjunction. In respect of construction management plan, I have to say it is really, really uncommon to put one on a single dwelling. The actual management of construction is obviously an issue when we have larger developments, but single dwellings, it is very, very difficult. I do add here that your officers have to manage these schemes as well if a condition is put on, and our resources are extremely limited, and we do have a number of applications for single dwellings, and while we do recognise that it can cause some disturbance when single dwellings are built, I have to say it would not normally be justified to put on a condition relating to a construction management plan for a single dwelling, and I really wouldn't recommend we start doing that, because it could become the norm for every single dwelling application we get. So I understand this is a difficult site. I understand there are level differences, but I really wouldn't recommend that is done in this particular instance, albeit members do have it in their gift to ask for it if they want it.
Before you come back, Chris, we were asked for it to defer the application. What's your view on a deferment?
Unless there's a reason for the deferment, we would not be reasonable for us to ask for any further information at this time, so I don't really know what we would be deferring it for.
Okay. I know Councillor James is... Did you ask?
And Parker.
And Andrew. Can I take Councillor James first? He hasn't spoken.
Thank you, Chairman. I recognise that the concern every member has with this, and most of the debate seems to be about the access, and it's steep and the speed of the traffic. But to be honest, these are reserved matters. What we're asked tonight in the outline is the principle of whether we're prepared to accept that this application for this property in this location is acceptable. And I think to discuss all the other things, whilst they're relevant and important, is miss the point that they're going to be dealt with at a later stage. And what I would suggest is that if we're content to say that this house is acceptable, and I'm not saying that I'm saying it is or not, but if we are, the officers clearly feel that it is acceptable, then I would think what members should do is to say, look, when the reserved matters come in on these issues that members are so concerned about, that those reserved matters issues come back to committee so that members can satisfy themselves that those issues are dealt with properly and carefully. But in the basis of our discussion tonight should not be about what's in the reserved matters, but should be the principle. And on that basis, the officers have clearly said they're content with the principle. I noticed the point that was made by the objector, and I think he was referring to a reference on page 113, a reference there to House 11 and the about these significant areas of plots of a significant area, but I noticed the officers have come to the belief that this application does not in any way go against what is in the existing area, in as much as the area of land is significant enough to fit in with the other properties in the area. So, I mean, I think that we've debated a long time about something that's not even before us.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it's a question of now whether or not we think it's right in principle. And I would move that that whatever the decision, the reserved matters come back here. In fact, I'm prepared to move on the basis of the officer's report. And although I've got sympathy with the objector, I'm going to move officer's recommendations with the proviso that the reserved matters come back here, and that our officers now know the concern that members have, and therefore that those reserved matters address all the concerns that members have outlined tonight. I'm happy to move that, Chairman.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Bird. Are you ready to take a vote on it? We've seemed to have, unless you've got something new, Andrew.
No, I was going to come in before. I mean, I take Marcus's point, but bearing in mind we've got a 3-metre high bank, which will have to be excavated from the highway, and there is a a vast volume of material that needs to be removed. I genuinely think in this case that a traffic management condition should be attached, because when it comes back to us for detailed discussion, that will be the most important thing, is how do you manage to get into this site and relieve the traffic problems that will undoubtedly. Equally, we've got problems with surface water runoffs and things like that. If we get mud on that road as part of the construction, we will have an accident waiting to happen. But I'll take Marcus's opinion on that.
Well, before Marcus comes in, Councillor Franks is going to...
very quick, thank you. Could I endorse Andrew's comments, but also, on a point of clarification, I'm not aware of any traffic calming measures resulting for Ardwin, and perhaps Marcus could address that point.
Okay, you've got a couple of points there, Marcus.
I can't address what the specific measures are. There are submissions as part of it, but I can't. I'm afraid I don't have those details with me. Obviously, if you wanted those, you should have asked before the meeting. All I can advise is that there are some. In respect of going back to the condition, we could put a traffic management condition on if you wish. There is no reason why that can't happen. I will also point out that we did talk about condition 11 and amending that to include a reference to the road frontage for walls as well. So just so the members are aware of that too. So if you are happy, we could apply, there is a standard prior to the commencement, a construction traffic management plan should be submitted to an approval in writing with the local planning authority to manage all vehicle movements associated with the development, and this shall include full details of parking and manoeuvring areas for construction traffic within the site, and the proposed routes for heavy goods vehicles, timings of heavy goods traffic, and the controlling of traffic routes and timings. The development shall at all times thereafter be carried out in accordance with the approved details unless the local planning authority agrees to variation. So that could be applied.
There has been clear reference to traffic calming relating to Ardwin. Now, I've asked, what are they? And I've been told, well, you should have checked beforehand. Well, really, if an officer is saying there are traffic calming measures, that information should be available now. Not, I didn't know that claim was going to be made. So how could I ask for it in advance?
Yeah.
I think the key point is that the council's highway officer has raised no objections based around this scheme. That is the only relevant point you need to consider as a councillor.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a mover and a seconder for a deferment. Do you still want to go ahead with that deferment? Okay then. It's been moved and seconded that we ask for a deferment. Those in favour of that deferment, please show. 3. Those against? Okay. Any? I didn't see Audrey's hand, so.
Keep your hands up, please.
Oh, they want to count.
Keep your hands up, please.
Yeah, put your hands up if you're voting. Yeah, against a deferment, yeah. 16. And abstentions? 1. Okay. It's been moved and seconded by Jeff and Jonathan Bird that we accept the officer's recommendation with that traffic management plan and that it comes back from the reserve matters back to full committee. So we take the decision and not the officers. Those in favour of that, please show. 16. And those against? Okay, that's clearly carried. Thank you for that. Yeah, right, we've got land to the west of Port Road, Wenvo, on page 123, another reserve matters application. I think that's by Red Row Homes, and I think Marcus may want to amend some of the conditions in there, but we'll wait and see.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there is amended conditions 1 and 9 related to that application to do with submissions in terms of amended plans. and also a reference, or incorrect reference to a condition within condition 9. So just clarifying that. Members will recall that this application actually, a matter relating to this application came to committee last time, which was the authorisation of tree preservation orders on land between existing houses and the proposed site. This application actually relates to an amendment to a previously approved reserve matter, and it seeks to firstly provide one additional dwelling. The scheme itself goes from 131 dwellings to 132 dwellings. There are changes in house types as part of the amendments, but essentially the key point is that the developers have pulled away from trying to put the trees that we protected last month in gardens, and have now decided to revert to the previous suggestion, which is a managed area of woodland at the rear of the site, with the gardens for the properties not being part of that area. So essentially, although it does involve the addition of the provision of an additional house, we don't believe that is unacceptable in this location, and we are recommending approval for the scheme as it stands.
Local member.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I asked for this to come to committee because I did have some concerns initially. The concerns have been allayed pretty much in full by the conditions and certainly by the TPO. I've just got one question. Will the Section 106 monies go up pro rata because of the extra house?
You are quite correct, they will, yes. The Section 106 actually is linked to the outline application, and obviously then the full amount is never agreed until the reserve matters come in. In this case, because there's an additional dwelling, yes, there will be an additional payment.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Hodges.
It was brought up there about the trees not going to be in the gardens, now being out in a, I think the quote was, managed piece of woodland. Yeah, who's going to manage it?
It's part of a scheme of management, has to be submitted with the application. So, pardon? Yes, yes, it's part of the whole scheme of the original application agreed a management scheme for that area.
No, there you are. I like Woodrow. They make some really good, Redrow rather. Yeah, they make good partners with the council. Yes, if you would, please.
Yeah, I'd like to move officer's recommendation.
Okay then, and seconded by Councillor Clive Williams. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Any against? Abstentions? Okay then, thanks for that. Yeah. Moving swiftly on, we've got this is an application for an infill in a quarry, which was subject today to certainly a site inspection, which you needed Wellingtons and everything else. It was a hell of a way up to go and look at it. We looked at it from all angles, certainly from the road Alla Road. Quarterella, yeah. We travelled the length of the road, both up and back. I had officers in the car. It certainly was a road that in parts was narrow, but we're going to hear from the officer how he can overcome those concerns. And those members who went to the site visit, probably they will want to ask a couple of questions as well. But it's on page 159, it's a full application, and I'm going to ask Marcus to give us some detail.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to note the three late representations, a letter received from the governors of St Mary Immaculate School, raising concerns, a consultation response from the council's pollution section, and also a letter from Kevin Brennan MP raising concerns on behalf of a constituent. this is an application. I think the word quarry was mentioned. It wasn't a quarry as such. It was a form of brickworks,
yeah.
where I think some excavation had gone on in the past. What the applicant is seeking to do is to infill indentations to bring the land back to natural ground level as formerly existed. As part of doing that, there will be some excavation because they have to render banks safe and put some drainage into the site. However, if you've read the report, you will note that there are a number of phases proposed as part of this scheme of restoration stroke infill. The amounts of materials are quite a lot needed to actually fill it in, but you will also note that it is intended that no materials will be taken off site. Originally, when this application was submitted, there was an intention to take material that was to be excavated to allow for the safe infilling of the land, to take that material off site. We received an objections from our own mineral advisor on the basis that this is site that would be a tantamount to creating a quarry, and this site is not identified for that purpose. So they have now, the applicants have agreed that no material will be taken off site, and any material that is actually excavated to aid with the infilling will be reused in the infilling of the land. On that basis, it isn't a mineral application. It is just an application to import inert waste to allow progressive restoration of the former mineral workings. I know a question has also been asked about whether there would have been any condition on the old quarry or the old brickworks about restoration in the past. Well, actually, these brickworks predate the planning system, so there are no conditions on there. But if this was a modern application, or even an application from the 50s or 60s, there would have been a restoration condition requiring the land to be infilled and to be restored after that was finished. A couple of other key points. I want to suggest that we amend Condition 8. You'll note that the Council's advisor on minerals has noted that it will take 5 years to actually complete infilling, but has recommended that we actually require by condition that it goes on for no longer than 5 years. And so if we look at Condition 8, I'm going to suggest that, bear with me, sorry, not Condition 8, I've got the wrong site, bear with me. And I eventually get to the right application. If we look at Condition 8,
I think you're going to do Condition 12, Marcus. It's Condition 12.
My report has been jiggled around with, and I've got the wrong. Right. Do apologise for that. My report has been moved around. Right, bear with me. So, yeah, Condition 4, I do apologise. Condition 4, it says a landscaping scheme for the restoration of the site, including a management plan, shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Now, that condition is wrong because it doesn't require it to be implemented. But what the easy way of requiring what our advisor suggested, which is that take no longer than 5 years, is that where it finishes with full stop currently, we add and shall be carried out within 5 years of the consent for works on the site, and that would ensure that this consent would only last for 5 years, essentially, because they have to do the restoration and the completion afterwards. So I'm suggesting that that is amended as that part of that condition. The second part is that what's happened here? I've got the wrong conditions attached to my application. That we require a condition which will notify us when works start, so that we can have a full clarification of when the 5 year period commences. As a point of note for members, Welsh Government are bringing in from March the 16th the requirement that all applications have a condition which developers will have to submit to the council when they're starting work on site, so that councils are aware of when commencements take place. We do have a standard condition which can be used for that, so I'm suggesting that there is additional condition placed on this consent as well, so that we do know when the consent starts, and obviously as it's getting close to 5 years we can ensure that the consent is completed. or the development is completed. Obviously, one of the big areas of concern with this application is the access and is the fact that there will be lorries taking materials to the site as part of the infilling process. Part of the reason that 5 years has been suggested by the applicants is they are seeking to minimise the impact by limiting the number of vehicle movements to the site. They are proposing, and it is conditioned, that they will only access the site between the hours of 9 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, and that vehicle movements will be limited to ensure that there isn't undue effect on existing dwellings in Cardiff. But as part of that, it is also being suggested, or we are suggesting, an additional condition, which is a construction management plan condition, along the lines of the construction management plan condition that was suggested on the previous application. And that will allow us to ensure that the best route is used and that we don't, hopefully, can overcome any issues of vehicles causing disturbance and or disturbing the areas in Cardiff as they approach the site. So that is a condition which will read: prior to the commencement of development, a construction management plan shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority to manage all vehicle movements associated with the development, including the management of traffic on Corderalla Road, and this shall include full details of parking manoeuvring areas for construction traffic within the site, the proposed routes for heavy goods vehicles, timings of heavy goods vehicle traffic, and the means for defining and controlling such traffic routes and timings. The development shall thereafter be carried out in full accordance with the approved details unless the planning authority gives written consent to any variation. So that would give you a belt and braces approach to ensure that vehicles will be controlled in terms of entering the site.
Before you come in, or members, we've got two speakers, one for, one against. Councillor Peter Bradbury will be the first one who's going to speak against. Welcome, Peter. And sorry? Well, he's checked in. Yeah, Councillor Peter Bradbury is a Cardiff councillor and the local member for Kyra. So you have 3 minutes, Peter, and your time starts now.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll start from the outset that none of those conditions that have just been read out will be any consolation to my constituents who are in the public gallery and are watching this webcast in Kyra. None of them. None of them address the concerns that Cardiff Council themselves have raised in their objection. And it's important to say that because you have ample planning grounds to turn this down. Firstly, it breaches your Strategic Policy 8 of your own UDP, in that there's no mitigation for any transport impact in this area. There's none. Can't widen the road. You can't, you can't make the road any easier to be accessed. It is a small, narrow road in a residential area. The Cardiff Council flagging concerns about health and safety, which is again contrary to ENV 29 in your UDP. And that includes, I think, the actual inertia in itself in terms of a buffer zone. What about my constituents in Hale Poyston, who would need a buffer zone? The officers just said this is not a creation of a quarry, but the application actually says, and one of the application refers to this application as being the creation of a quarry access ramp at a slope exceeding 12%. I'd remind the committee that both our LDP in Cardiff and yours in the Vale have stated that this site should not be restored as any sort of form of working quarry. Yet there's actually in the application referral to a working quarry in the application. They've said it, and the council say unacceptably detracts on the amenities and the environment of the residents in the vicinity. They're right. I represent the area. They're right. Nobody, even on between 9 o'clock and 3 p.m, wants HGV lorries going down a small residential road. The transport evaluation was done on. Cardiff Council, in many of their consultation documents, asked what the mitigation could be for the transport evaluation being carried out further down Corderalla Road and not on the Corderalla Road Hale Trelai Junction, where there are 3 schools within a 500-yard radius and where there are 500 homes nearly affected. None of that has been addressed in the evaluations addendum or any of the conditions that have been laid out by your officer. The residents of Kyra, who I'm proud to represent and in here today have travelled down from Cardiff have no right to appeal this. None. But the applicant can. And you have got ample grounds, ample planning grounds to turn this down. This is what effectively is being suggested today is that my constituents will end up having.
Can you sum up?
Yeah, I'm summing up. That my constituents will have to have to put up with HGV lorries going down from 9 till 3 p.m. and that is still at a time where schools are leaving. I really think you should turn this application down and give my constituents the opportunity to have a decent life in their residential area, because this is a large residential area we're affecting here.
Okay. Any member would like to ask Peter any points of clarification before he steps down? No? Thank you, Peter. Because we've got somebody...
Turn your light.
Yeah, turn your light off, thank you. We've got somebody who wants to speak for, and it's Mr. Hugh Richards, SLR Consulting. Thank you. And like the former speaker, you've got 3 minutes, and your time starts when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. As the officer's report states, the application site is currently classified as a derelict site with a planning permission for mineral extraction. The site was left unrestored following the closure of the brickworks in the 1960s and was disturbed further by the construction of the A4232 in the 1980s, during which time the site was partially filled with soils and other inert material, but the restoration was never completed. This application is simply a proposal to complete those restoration works in accordance with Planning Policy Min 10. The restoration will be achieved by utilising historical inert fill located at the site and importing soils, clays and other inert waste material from highway, construction and demolition projects in the Vale and Cardiff. It is anticipated that the restoration materials will be imported at a rate of up to 40,000 tonnes per annum over a temporary period of 5 years. This equates to an annual average HGV delivery rate of 2 per hour, based on the proposed working hours, which, as mentioned, under proposed planning condition will be limited strictly from 9 AM to 3 PM weekdays only. I'd like to clarify that this site is a restoration scheme involving inert material only. It is not, nor has it ever been, a waste management site that would accept black bag waste. Also, there has never been any proposal to use incinerated bottom ash in this restoration scheme. I understand that incinerated bottom ash does not qualify as an inert waste. It is a non-hazardous waste material, so would not be permitted at the site under the proposed planning conditions, or under an NRW permit that would also be required for the development to go ahead, and would be an additional tier of environmental control. We consider that impacts in terms of noise and dust can be controlled by the limited working hours and the construction environmental management plan proposed under condition. This will require surfacing of part of the 750-metre long access road into the site from the public highway and the installation of a 3-stage wheel wash to reduce dust. The plan will also include measures to control noise as necessary. Further controls relating to highway safety would be implemented through a traffic management plan relating specifically to the use of Cwrdrala Road by HGVs. This was recommended as a planning condition by Cardiff Council in their original response. The plan will also include a complaints management system for residents to ensure the applicant can act swiftly to manage any potential issues. The applicant intends to actively liaise with the local community to mitigate any potential amenity impacts during the course of the proposed development. The site is well screened, so in terms of potential visual impact, this is likely to be short-term, and in terms of views from the north. As the officers recognise, the restored site would offer visual enhancement when the scheme is fully planted up and restored, and it will complement the backdrop to a primary route into the Vale and Cardiff. As the officers' report concludes, the proposed development accords with the development plan, and there are no material considerations that indicate otherwise. I therefore request the committee accept the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission based on the conditions set out in the report.
Gosh, that was pretty close. Was on the button. Right. Nick, you want to ask a question of clarification? Thank you.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks for coming to speak to us. This is very good of you. Why are you doing it?
In terms of the restoration, nothing for me. I'm the agent to the applicant. Essentially, the proposal is to restore what was formerly a former brick pit. For those members that went on the site visit today, they would have seen that the faces of the former quarry site are pretty sheer and over 10 metres, 10 to 20 metres in places. It is weathered material, so there are concerns about the stability of those faces. So essentially the proposal is to restore that site back to the original landform, so that it's blended in with the surrounding land.
Yeah, it is points of clarification, Nick, and I don't find that as a...
Yes, Chairman, because the title is photovoltaic installation.
Well, if you had gone to the site visit, Nick, that would have been pretty apparent to you, because it's sandwiched between...
Yeah, but we're talking about an area where there's not an application for a photovoltaic installation.
No, I think that the site is named that because of a number of solar panels.
Well, why didn't they just call it Cortoralla Road, former brickworks? Well, I'm confused by that, and my question is, why would a company want to spend lots and lots of money on restoring a site?
Well, we'll ask Marcus that, shall we? Okay, Marcus.
I can't really comment on it other than to say I'm sure that there will be some inert waste. It's still inert waste, and there will be some financial gain from removing that. But, well, no, I think that's a bit unfair. At the end of the day, the point is that when any quarry or other mineral extraction is restored, there is a need to put material back into that quarry. If it is inert, then obviously there will be a time when there will be money paid for that. But I think the point is that that is not really a material consideration for members to consider this. It is just the proposal that is before you.
Okay. Yeah. Can we ask Councillor Gwyn Roberts? He wanted to ask.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this is to the Speaker. The report on page 159 talks about 10 vehicles in and back out every day, so it's 20 round trips. But the Speaker just specifically said 12 vehicles a day. Can we clarify, and will we be putting a limit of 10, please?
Okay.
Yeah, certainly the application, the planning statement, was based on an average over the year of 10 per day. There were various obviously concerns raised during the consultation process, and the applicant put forward basically that they would be happy for a condition A, to limit the working hours from 9 till 3, and also, if necessary, to put a maximum cap of 12. So the 10 was based on an average over a 12-month period, and the 12 then was based on, obviously, you know, a potential cap on that, but essentially it works out at 2 per hour.
Okay, that's that question. Any other member like to ask a question? No? Okay. Would you like to sit back in the... Thank you. Marcus, is there anything that's been raised that you want to speak about?
Just to sort of, for clarification, it is not a quarry. One of the very key issues is we've established that there is no material coming out of this site. Any material that is actually extracted as part of the works will be basically put back into the site. We've actually put a condition on to ensure that that doesn't happen. It's condition 13, which is that no excavated materials or waste shall be removed from the site and only inert waste brought onto the site. The other issue is that obviously if members wanted to limit vehicle movements to 12, that could be done as part of the proposed condition 12, amended condition 12, which I read out earlier, where we could require no more than 12 vehicle movements per day associated with the quarry.
Okay. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Just thinking about the roads and vehicle sizes, could we limit the vehicle sizes? Because it's unlikely to use articulated vehicles on this type of material, but I have seen it. And if we limited it to a... I'm looking at Bob here because he's the specialist, but if we put a weight limit on that would stop articulated lorries, that may help matters.
If I come back very quickly, obviously that condition I read out to you requires full details to be submitted, and that would include of the vehicles. So I think our highways colleagues would look at that and make a judgment on what was the acceptable size of vehicle. It would be hard for you as members now to put a a reasonable weight on it. It's not really your job as a specialist, but there is a requirement as part of that condition for them to submit those details, so it would be covered by that.
Okay. Councillor John Drysdale.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask how far from where the work is actually going to take place, rather than the access track, is it to the nearest homes? And has there been any consideration, as there was, for example, with some of the developments down in the docks area, looking at the prevailing winds and where dust and noise was likely to be carried?
Yes, I mean, that's been considered by the council's pollution section. The nearest houses are obviously over the link road and within Cardiff. But obviously any noise effect will be severely tempered by the fact that the road itself generates quite a high level of noise. But obviously there are comments from our colleagues in the pollution section. They were submitted as late representations, but they are there for members to view. I'm just looking at it now. And basically they recommend a construction environmental management plan, which is recommended as part of the scheme.
Okay, Councillor Hamilton.
Chair, you've already answered my questions.
Okay, Councillor Hodges.
Thank you, Chairman. Earlier discussion came down to limiting the work to 5 years.
Yes.
And in fact, changing a condition to actually bring that in. Now that we're talking about limiting vehicle movements, what if it's not completed in 5 years?
Yeah.
That was rhetorical. It'll come back for planning. So if it's going to come back for planning, what's the point in putting a limit on it?
No.
Essentially, that gives you as members control over whether you want to refuse it or in the future
Granted.
if you feel or grant it. It's not uncommon. It's happened, for example, with the quarry in Farmon. It's happened in Wenvo. It's happened everywhere.
So in 5 years from the start, if it's not completed, we could then stop it. Uncompleted.
Yeah.
What I could advise is you could serve a breach of condition notice based around that condition requiring completion.
Okay, Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a small point on 11. I'd like to amend the 10 metres possibly to 20 metres. A lorry at 10 metres is not a particularly big lorry, and 2 lorries coming in and out of that entrance that we were there this morning would be better served by having maybe 20 metres plus a sufficient width that both lorries can pass and repass. It's the old standard condition, because on the little red line it's only showing the little track. So however we can help that matter would be sensible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a recommendation for highways officers. We're not highways officers, but Marcus is saying he has no problem with amending that to 20 metres. Okay. Anybody else before we go for a vote? Yes, Councillor Penrose.
How are we going to police the number of vehicles going in and out?
Marcus?
When operations carry out undertaken, they will actually have to keep records of how many vehicles they've had to the site. So obviously it would be retrospective, but if that did happen and there were more vehicle movements, we would be able to actually ascertain that was happening.
Okay. Right, okay then. Officers are asking you to recommend this officer's recommendation, and you're moving it. Have you got a seconder? 2 seconders there. Okay. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. $16. Those against? Oh, any abstentions? No. Thank you. That's carried. We've got back to page 181, which is Ardwin and Penny Turnpike Road in Dinas Powys. I think this is to do with plot 14, is it, Marcus?
It is, Chair, yes. Members will recall this is coming back before us yet again. This application relates to the properties which are at the back of Arduin, or if you like, the south of Arduin site. You will recall when we visited the site on, I think, 2 occasions, there was some concern about possible overlooking of existing dwellings, and councillors recommended the removal of Velux windows in the roofs of a number of properties. This property, plot 14, is one of the properties that actually doesn't overlook any of the properties below, but was unfortunately included within the condition previously, and the applicants are requesting that the requirement to take the Velux windows out in this particular case are actually relaxed, and that the Veluxes can stay. And your officers have looked at it on site and consider that is acceptable, and there is no effect on neighbours.
I think you suggested that in the first place, didn't you?
I may have, Chair.
Yeah, I think you did. But never mind. Councillor Franks.
Thank you, Chair. This might be a small matter in the eyes of many people here, but it does show the problems of saying, oh, we leave things for conditions, and conditions will sort this out. And I would remind you that there was a lot of discussion between the residents and the applicant, which resulted in these conditions. And now we seem to be backtracking, which does worry me in practice here and in principle, because we've heard so much tonight. Oh, it'll be conditions, drainage conditions, construction conditions, highway issues. I'm becoming more and more uncomfortable with this situation. So I'm more than happy to move we do not approve this application.
Seconder. I have to say, Chris, I was at that site visit, and my recollection was that the officers said, instead of putting a blanket condition on all those properties at the back, the one that least affected them was plot 14, and they were unhappy about granting that blanket condition at the time, which I referred to, which Marcus said, because I don't believe that that Velux window overlooks anybody and doesn't cause any substantial harm with the siting of that plot adjacent to those plots where those people where we went and visited. So I don't agree with you. I think that putting a blanket condition on all those properties was a backward step. Okay. But you've moved and seconded for refusal. I don't know whether any member wants to raise anything other than what I've said. Otherwise, I'll go straight to a vote. Okay. Those in favour of refusal, please show. 3. Thank you. Those against? Yeah, that's clearly carried. So vote in favour now of the officer's recommendation. Please show. And those against the officer's recommendation, thank you. 3 again. Can I thank everybody? Can you remember that the next planning committee is moved to the 3rd of March, just in case you haven't got it in yet. So we're only around 3 weeks away, so it's going to come round pretty quick. Okay. You got anything on the... I hope we've got no Dennis Powis on there.